Your phone dies tonight. No backup. 10 years of photos gone in an instant. You feel sick just thinking about it. But the real answer to what humanity has already lost is far stranger, because it already happened once, on a scale you cannot fully picture, and almost nobody agrees on how. The Library of Alexandria is the most famous library that ever existed. Ask anyone how it ended, and you'll get the same story. A fire, a single catastrophic night, centuries of human knowledge turned to ash in hours. It's a clean story. It's a tragic story. Is it true? Not really. To understand what actually happened, you have to go back to why the library existed at all. In the 3rd century BCE, Alexandria was not just a city, it was an obsession. Founded by Alexander the Great and ruled by his successors, the Ptolemies, Alexandria was built to be the intellectual capital of the known world, and the library was the instrument of that ambition. Here's the part most people never learn. The library wasn't a quiet reading room. It was closer to an intelligence operation for books. Ships arriving in Alexandria's harbor were required by law to surrender any scrolls on board. Scribes copied them. The originals stayed in the library. The owners got copies, sometimes worse copies, deliberately, so the best version always remained in Alexandria. This wasn't collecting. This was extraction on an imperial scale.
At its height, the library may have held somewhere between 200,000 and 700,000 scrolls. Historians still argue over the number. What isn't in dispute is the ambition behind it. To gather in one building everything humans had ever written down. Mathematics, medicine, astronomy, poetry, philosophy, all of it under one roof, in one city, for one purpose: total knowledge. So how does something like that just disappear? This is where the story gets strange, because it doesn't disappear all at once. It unravels, slowly, across centuries, through a sequence of smaller wounds that add up to something far more disturbing than a single fire.
The first blow came in 48 BCE. Julius Caesar was in Alexandria, caught in a political crisis, and he ordered his own ships burned in the harbor to block his enemies. The fire spread. It reached buildings near the docks. Ancient sources, including Plutarch, describe flames damaging warehouses that may have stored scrolls. Notice the wording there, may have. Even the ancient accounts hedge. Classicist Luciano Canfora, who wrote an entire book investigating this event, argued that what burned in 48 BCE was likely a satellite storage facility near the harbor, not the library's core collection. A serious loss, certainly, but not the death blow the popular story imagines. So if Caesar didn't destroy it, who did? Nobody, really. Or rather, everybody, a little bit, over 400 years. Egyptologist Mostafa El-Abbadi spent decades tracing the library's institutional decline, and his research points somewhere far less cinematic than fire. He found evidence of funding cuts, political instability, scholars leaving Alexandria for safer, better-funded cities. A library isn't just a building full of scrolls. It's an institution that needs money, staff, and stability to survive. Take those away slowly enough, And you don't need a fire. Neglect does the job just as completely. Think about that for a second. We tell the fire story because it's dramatic. It has a villain. It has a moment. But the historical evidence points to something quieter and, honestly, more unsettling. Not an explosion of loss, but an erosion of it.
There's a third piece of this puzzle, and it comes from a historian named Roger Bagnall, who studies Roman Egypt in extraordinary detail. Bagnall's research suggests something that upends the whole narrative. He argues that by the time later, more dramatic destructions were supposedly happening in the 3rd and 4th century CE, the library's collection had likely already shrunk dramatically, not from any single violent event, but from the ordinary decay that untended papyrus suffers in a humid climate over hundreds of years. Scrolls made of plant fiber don't last forever. Nobody was renewing the supply. Wars, taxes, and shifting political priorities meant the great copying project had slowed to a trickle. In other words, the library wasn't murdered. It died of old age, malnutrition, and neglect. And historians have simply been arguing over which funeral to blame.
There were other moments people point to as well, and it's worth walking through them, because each one turns out to be smaller and messier than the legend suggests. In 391 CE, a Christian mob, acting under a decree from the Roman Emperor Theodosius that ordered the destruction of pagan temples, attacked the Serapeum, a temple complex in Alexandria that by then housed what remained of a secondary library collection. This event genuinely happened. It was genuinely destructive. But by 391 CE, most historians agree the original Great Library had already ceased to function as the sprawling research institution it once was. What burned at the Serapeum was a shadow of the original, a remnant collection in a temple that had become a flashpoint in a religious conflict that had almost nothing to do with scholarship.
Then there's the story you may have heard about the Muslim conquest of Egypt in 641 CE, when a caliph supposedly ordered the library's remaining scrolls burned to heat the city's bathhouses, reasoning that if the books agreed with the Quran, they were unnecessary, and if they disagreed, they were heretical. It's a vivid story. It's also almost certainly a later fabrication. The account doesn't appear in any historical source until roughly 500 years after the event supposedly took place, first showing up in the writings of a 13th century author. No contemporary source from the 7th century mentions it at all, which raises an obvious question. Why would people invent a destruction that never happened?
Because a villain is satisfying. Political and religious rivals have used the burning of Alexandria as a weapon for 2,000 years, each accusing the other side of the crime. Romans blamed Caesar's political rivals. Christians blamed pagans. Later writers blamed Christians. Still later writers blamed the Muslim conquest. Each version served whoever was telling it, casting their own side as innocent bystanders to someone else's act of cultural violence. The fire became less a historical event and more a mirror, reflecting whatever bias the storyteller carried into it. Here's the twist that should genuinely unsettle you. There likely was no single day the Library of Alexandria fell. There was no final scene, no last librarian standing in the ashes. Instead, there was a slow, grinding two-part disappearance. First, the institution collapsed as funding dried up and scholars scattered to cities like Constantinople and Antioch. Second, and far more quietly, the physical scrolls simply crumbled, uncopied and unread, until one day there was nothing left to burn, because there was almost nothing left at all.
Does that change how it feels? It should, because a fire is something that happens to you. Decay is something that happens because of what you failed to do. One is a tragedy. The other is a warning. And this is where the story stops being about ancient Egypt and starts being about you. Right now, in this exact moment, something remarkably similar is happening to human knowledge, and almost nobody is treating it like an emergency. Digital files rot. Storage formats become unreadable. Websites vanish. A 2021 study on link rot found that a significant percentage of hyperlinks in academic papers, court decisions, and even Wikipedia articles simply stop working within just a few years of publication. Not because of some catastrophic fire, because of neglect. Because servers get shut down, companies fold, formats become obsolete, and nobody thought to preserve the copy. We like to imagine that digital information is permanent, that once something exists online, it exists forever. It doesn't. It exists as long as someone is paying to keep the server running and updating the format and doing the unglamorous work of preservation. The moment that stops, decay begins. Slowly, quietly, exactly like Alexandria. Think about your own life for a second. How many old photos exist only on a hard drive you haven't opened in years? How many messages, journal entries, voice memos sit on a device, slowly aging toward obsolescence? You don't need a fire to lose them. You just need to do nothing. That's the uncomfortable mirror the Library of Alexandria holds up. We've spent centuries telling ourselves a story about a dramatic villain, a single night, a single blaze, because that story lets us off the hook. It suggests the loss was something that happened to civilization, not something civilization allowed to happen.
But the real history is quieter and harder to sit with. The scrolls that mattered most weren't lost in an instant. They were lost one skipped copy at a time, one budget cut at a time, one scholar who left and never came back. Multiply that by 400 years, and an empire's worth of human thought simply evaporates. So what actually survived? Fragments, echoes. We know the names of works we'll never read, referenced in other texts that happened to survive by accident, copied by monks in later centuries who had no idea they were preserving the last trace of something irreplaceable. Entire branches of ancient mathematics, medicine, and astronomy exist today only as titles in someone else's footnotes. We know they existed. We will never know what they said.
Consider the scale of what's actually at risk. Researchers studying digital preservation have found that a large share of scientific data sets from studies published just 20 years ago are already unrecoverable. Not because anyone destroyed them, but because the storage media failed. The software that could read them stopped being supported, or the one person who knew where the backup lived left the institution and took that knowledge with them. 20 years. That's not ancient history. That's the length of a single career. Governments lose records this way. Companies lose entire product histories this way. Families lose decades of memories this way. One unlabeled hard drive at a time, until the drive itself fails and nobody notices until they go looking for something that used to be there.
That should change how you think about preservation, not as an ancient problem, but as an active, ongoing responsibility. The instinct to blame a single fire is comforting because it implies the danger has passed. It hasn't. It just changed shape. Where Alexandria had papyrus rotting in a humid climate, we have hard drives failing silently, cloud services shutting down with 30 days' notice, and formats that no software will open 20 years from now. The Library of Alexandria wasn't destroyed by a moment. It was destroyed by thousands of small moments where someone could have acted and didn't. That is the real lesson historians like Bagnall, Canfora, and El-Abbadi have uncovered, piece by piece, over decades of research. Catastrophe is rarely as loud as we remember it. Usually it's silent, and it's already begun before anyone notices.
Your phone won't catch fire tonight. It doesn't need to. All it needs is time and neglect, and the quiet assumption that everything you haven't backed up will simply be there tomorrow. Just like it was for 400 years, in a library that no one meant to destroy and that no one managed to save.